Hey guys, real quick before we jump into this episode, this is one, just for full disclosure, we
Mhm.
recorded forever ago.
A long time ago, long time ago, before the shit hit the fan.
And which shit are you talking about, Annie? There's so much
Well,
shit.
there's lots of shit going on, but this was pre
Before the first shit.
before the first, but pre-COVID and pre what is going on in the state of our country right now. So we probably are a little bit more chipper, a little happier, and maybe things that we reference are maybe not realistic, maybe in terms
Well,
of travel.
what's really funny is I remember, I think it was off air. I don't think it was when we were actually recording. Brian was like, yeah, I have something planned to go to Italy, but I think it'll be okay. This was like very pre-coronavirus, if I'm remembering correctly,
Hmm.
because he was like, it should be fine. I don't think it was fine.
It's not fun
So
anymore.
just to put it in context, in case you're wondering why we're so happy. But obviously, this is an episode that is timely anytime, dealing with difficult people and how to come up on top. And I know, honestly, with the whole coronavirus, I think a lot of us in our business have had to deal with difficult situations like
Hmm.
additional fees and additional charges and moving clients to different dates. Like, I know it hasn't been easy for many of us. So, timely episode,
Yeah.
even though it was recorded a long time ago.
Hmm.
Episode 169, Dealing with the Difficult and How to Come Out on Top. This Week in Weddings is a support group for wedding industry entrepreneurs. We're the ones behind the scenes, planning and designing the event, arranging the flowers, creating the invitations, or taking the photographs for a couple's most important day ever. No pressure. If you've been in the wedding industry for more than a minute, you know it's not all cake and confetti. Running a wedding business is hard, and it's certainly not for the faint of heart. This Week in Weddings is where we catch up on this often crazy but amazing industry and share tips on how to be a better business owner, all while supporting each other along the way. You're listening to This Week in Weddings with Kimberly Rhodes and Annie Roach. Hi guys, I'm Kimberly Rhodes, owner of Hitched Events.
And I'm Annie Roach, owner of 5x7 Designs.
Oh wait, I have one more thing I have to tell you. Sorry, Lance.
No.
He also was like, there's like not the delay that you sometimes have with Zencaster
Oh, that's
from,
good.
yeah. I mean, that's what they were saying. So we'll see. Sorry, Lance, I'm going to start over. Hi, guys. I'm Kimberly Rhodes, owner of Hitched Events.
And I'm Annie Roach, owner of 5x7 Designs.
Welcome back to the podcast. Annie, what's going on in your life?
Yeah, just same old, just trucking along.
Living the dream, as they
Living the
say.
dream we get into spring and then the summer. It's basically wet. Well, I mean, we're blessed here in Dallas with having a pretty steady wedding season, but a lot of people like to get married in the late spring and I guess maybe early. Well, it gets really hot here early summer, but it's
Does get hot.
starting to become wedding season ish here.
It is crazy town. Well, with crazy wedding season comes difficult situations and difficult
Crazy
clients.
people.
Well,
Yeah.
this week we are talking with photographer Brian Leahy about dealing with difficulties, whether that be clients or other vendors or
Situations.
Exactly. Yeah. So Brian travels all over the world doing photography. So I'm sure he's run into his fair share of difficulties.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can only imagine. I mean, I've had my fair share of difficult. I mean, I would say I'm lucky that I try to remain calm, and so maybe like they will parallel my calmness. But inside, usually I'm like, fuck, shit, balls. Like that's
But
me
that's a
inside.
good theory. I mean, that's a good solution. Stay
Yeah.
calm.
Stay calm, but yeah, outside I look cool as a cucumber, but inside it's a big old hot mess in my brain. Like,
I love it.
but I don't know.
Well, Brian Leahy is a laid back Southern California guy with an intense passion for people and travel. His philosophy is simple. Every great photo starts with connection, a connection with people, their loved ones, their crazy friends, and the natural beauty of destination locations. His outgoing nature, relaxed style, and knack for capturing fleeting, candid moments has made him one of the most sought-after photographers in the U.S., both for local events and destination events around the world.
For Brian, photography is more than just the end result. It's about the experience too. His background in travel photography informs his style and technique, but his personality leads the rest. The best images come with trust and rapport as Brian becomes part of your group, blending in to find those special, candid moments. Brian has been published in countless magazines and blogs, including Martha Stewart Weddings, The Knot, Inside Weddings, Grace Ormond, and People. Brian is also a highly skilled and seasoned speaker and educator within the wedding and events world, having taught for The Knot, Engaged Luxury Wedding Summit, and many more.
Let's welcome to the show Brian Leahy.
Welcome to the show, Brian. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really excited for this morning.
We've been talking about having you on the podcast for maybe 2 years now.
Like you said, better late than never.
Better late than never, and this will totally be worth the wait. Thank you for being patient with us, and by us, I mean me. And before we get started talking about difficult things.
We're just a hot commodity. We just have a 2-year waiting list. We should have gotten with that.
I'm a privileged one to finally get on here.
I like that. That's better than I just couldn't get my act together.
You can use that soundbite.
That's perfect. Brian, tell us a little bit about your story and how you got into the wedding industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently a full-time destination wedding photographer. I'm based in Los Angeles. I've been in LA just about 10 and a half years, originally from Tucson. And I kind of fell into photography. I used to be in the mortgage business. I went to University of Arizona. I have a marketing degree and used to be just a general businessman in the marketing world up until 2008 when the market crashed and the company I was working for went bankrupt. But at the time, I happened to be getting into photography. When I graduated college, I started traveling quite a bit just for fun and had never really picked up a camera before. And just started taking photos on my vacations and came back and had a lot of friends say, hey, your photos are actually really good. We don't mind looking at these. Most people don't take the best travel photos. And had quite a few friends in multiple groups suggest I get into photography and kind of just started shooting for fun on the side. And while I was working for the mortgage company, I started shooting real estate for my realtor friends and realtor headshots and families and babies and dogs and really crappy Tucson nightclubs for like $8 an hour and pretty much just anything on the side just because I was having a good time. It was a fun diversion, something a lot different from the real estate world. And I started working for a graduation photography company. And I got to travel all over the country for them.
Graduation, awesome. Meaning like you're holding your diploma.
Yeah, exactly. So like the official high school, college ceremony photographer. So yes, handshake with the dean, photo with the diploma. Very, very creative photography.
It actually sounds horrible.
It was.
Side note on that, you guys, This is a very embarrassing story. When I graduated from college, I went to USC, and I feel like it was not very organized with their photographer. Mm-hmm. And I had this cup of mimosa.
Oh no!
And in my official college photograph, getting my diploma, I am holding a mimosa in my picture.
I'm sure your parents are very proud.
We're so mad. You're like, we paid for all this money, and there you are with a mimosa in your hand. It's on brand, I guess. I mean,
I was going to say, and it's a USC. That makes sense.
Yeah. So that was my shame.
See, and they were hiring really solid photographers by the fact that no one was like, "Hey, how about you don't
be like, put that down." But
right? Nope. Yeah. That's amazing. So so this company, big national firm, they shot it. In fact, it was probably that company that shot that photo.
But not you, Brian. You would have been like,
definitely not me.
Put the champagne glass down.
Keep it classy for like 2 minutes. But it was a great job because I got to fly all over the country on the weekends. So I could still work for the mortgage guys during the week. And then on the weekends, like Thursday through Sunday, I get to fly around the country and shoot these graduations during grad season. And at one point, they sent me to come shoot Palisades High School out here in LA. And I had never been to LA before, so that was my first trip. And I've got some family here in town, my aunt and uncle and cousins, and basically called my aunt up, said, hey, I'm in town for 24 hours. I'm only working for a few. I'd love to catch up. She didn't even know I was doing photography at the time. And she said, oh my gosh, my best friend's a food photographer. I should introduce you. I said, yeah, that'd be amazing. So went to this gal's studio that afternoon in Culver City, and she had this beautiful 2-story, stunning studio in downtown Culver. And after being there for about 15 minutes, I basically asked this photographer, I said, hey, can I come work for you for free for 3 months if my aunt and uncle let me stay with them? And the photographer was like, yeah, of course, free help for 3 months. It sounds great. And my aunt and uncle were more than happy to have me. So I moved to LA about 2 weeks later and was
Oh,
supposed to
wow.
be here for 3 months and then go back to Tucson. At the time, I had was still working for the mortgage company. I had a house, I had a girlfriend, but I was like, I'm just going to go to LA for a few months and test it out. And
I'm sure that girlfriend just
Yeah, she's
loved
like,
that.
yeah, she's
oh
like,
yeah. Fast forward a little. That didn't last. So, but after about 2 weeks in LA, I immediately knew I was like, this is the place for me. I was like, I'm never going back to Arizona. And now it's been 10 years, 10 and a half years. And when I first came out here, I got hooked up with a photo booth company that was doing a ton of destination jobs all over the country. I got hooked up with a few wedding photographers. And just to back up a hot minute, I had shot my first wedding about 2.5 years prior to moving to LA, and had some family friends call me up. They said, hey, we weren't even going to have a photographer, but we'll pay you like $400. We know you're getting into it. And I was like, yeah, $400 to shoot a party. It sounds great. And shot that event and hated it, like beyond
Oh,
belief,
wow.
hated it.
Oh, really?
Well, so I had never even been to a wedding before and had no idea how the flow of the day was, had no idea the traditions, like literally knew nothing about weddings. And it was a really small, like church rec room basement, about as low key as you can get. And the photos were terrible. I mean, the couple was happy because they weren't going to have photos anyways. They were just more than happy to kind of give me the opportunity. And I still credit them with kind of giving me my start. But as soon as that wedding was over, I was like, I am never shooting a wedding again. That was so stressful. I didn't like it. It was just not my thing. And coming out to LA, I started shooting a bunch of random things. I was working for the food photographer. I was shooting Hollywood nightclubs. I was shooting real estate, shot a few bar mitzvahs here and there, and then started shooting weddings randomly here and there with a couple other photographers. And after about a year of that, I quickly realized how much I actually enjoyed it. The more I did it, the more I was prepared, and the more, I had better equipment and just kind of knew what I was doing. And I quickly realized my specialty is drunk adults beyond anything else. And just kind of, really fell into it and decided it was something that I wanted to pursue a little more. So about 8 years ago, I'd said, okay, I'm going to go into this full time, and really stopped shooting everything else. So now it's been full-time weddings for about 8 years. And then about 3 years ago, I made the transition over the span of a few years to full-time destination, because I really had always wanted to combine travel with my work. And now all I shoot is destination. So it keeps me pretty busy.
That's amazing.
Wow.
You've done a lot in just those 8 years, Brian.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. Like it doesn't seem nearly that long, but I will say California has also treated me very well. There's just so much work here, and it was a great place for me to build my business before I started expanding into other markets. So, I think the location for sure was definitely a boon to my business, just because the wedding market here is it's insanely huge. So. I definitely have to credit LA for helping me out when I first started.
That's awesome. Well, in all the years that you've been doing this and all the travel and all the clients, I'm sure you've run into some difficult situations.
Always.
It's my lead in. And I think everyone in the wedding industry, it's so interesting because I was just at a conference that was not wedding industry related. And I was surrounded by 2,000 people thinking, I actually don't have a ton in common with these people, because I'm used to going to event conferences where everyone understands the world that we live in.
Sure.
And understands
that mutual respect of the difficulty.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. And I think it's just a different animal. Like when you're dealing with brides and grooms and couples and family stress and being at an event that's, you're on your feet for 12 hours or whatever it is. I think that's just so unique to our world that I think a lot of people can't understand it necessarily.
Yeah, if you're an orthodontist, what's the worst thing to happen? You give the kid the wrong color braces or something. It's they lose a tooth. I guess that's pretty bad. But
Well, and
I
people
feel like
only
we have a
ever
lot more
see,
psychological
yeah.
problems.
And if they're
on
not
our
in
end.
our business, they only ever see the fun side, which is being a guest at a wedding. They never see the back end of things. So it is
Yeah.
really hard to have any idea what our jobs are actually like if you've never been on the back end.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, and I feel like everyone who's listening can probably like relate to a difficult situation, whether it's a client, which I'm sure we've all had, or like even just a peer-to-peer, like dealing with a difficult vendor situation. I'm sure we can all relate.
Always. we've all got that book of stories for sure.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about, and I'm sure that you have a lot of stories, and we don't need to like bash any difficult sitch, but like kind of tell us some of the difficult situations you've been in and how you've been able to like get out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it kind of like it definitely varies. You've got your client side issues and then you've got your vendor side issues. One thing we run into, and luckily because I don't work in LA that often anymore, I don't run into this problem. But one of the problems with Los Angeles area specifically is that photo and video here, there are so many photographers and so many videographers. And so that's a very tight relationship that we have to have on wedding day because we work so closely. But the issue you run into in LA specifically a lot is that you have these videographers who they're artists and they're cinematographers and they're directors because they really want to be in TV and film. But when they're 22 years old, where's the easy place to start is weddings. And so I have worked with quite a few video teams over the years who have come in guns blazing as if they're going to direct a Hollywood film. And, at the end of the day, our clients are not actors, so they already have a hard enough time in front of my still camera, let alone having to act in front of a video team. And I had a really, really beautiful same-sex female wedding a couple years ago in Malibu. And beautiful wedding, black tie. They both wore gorgeous white gowns. I was at this incredibly stunning venue at the top of the mountain in Malibu. And, my team, as most wedding professionals should, dress very professional. You dress for the event, you dress for the part. And we always get there early, especially the photo side, because we like to kind of assert our dominance over the event when it comes to photo and video. So, you have to get there a little early, be the first ones in charge. And this video team of 3 gentlemen, we'll call them gentlemen, but 3 boys roll in, and they can't be more than 20, 21. And they're in black jeans and tennis shoes and baseball hats and sweaters. Yeah, that's exact sound our entire team made when these guys walked in.
They got their like Pi Kappa Phi.
Oh, yeah. And one of them had a Nike sweater on, like branded. And I was just like, wow, like you guys made no effort. And, when you've been in the business long enough, regardless of skill, you see someone come in like that and you know immediately that this is going to be a problem. And unfortunately, and I'd spoken to the planner ahead of time, said, hey, is there video? She's like, yes, I don't know them. The brides hire them themselves. We had no say over that. And I was like, okay, well, always give them the benefit of the doubt. And they roll in and they've got the most expensive equipment you could possibly buy. And in fact, to the point where you looked at their equipment and you're like, this is complete overkill for a wedding. Like if you're shooting a Hollywood feature, amazing. Like you guys are going to crush it right now. But they roll in with like red cinema cameras. I mean, and these are like $25,000, $30,000 cameras that you just don't need them for a wedding. And, you can tell when somebody like that walks in, they don't really know what they're doing. They're just overcompensating with their equipment. And I told my team, I was like, listen, like today may not go that well because I can already tell these guys are going to be a major problem. And again, having done this long enough, you can see the red flags, you know what's happening. And,
yeah, for sure.
And, and they didn't come up, they didn't introduce themselves, they didn't say hi, they just kind of hopped right in and stuck together, all 3 of them. And that was the bigger problem too, is that typically, if you have 2 or 3 shooters, it's because you're getting 2 or 3 angles. Yet these 3 guys stood 1, 2, 3 next to each other the entire day. And so they're all also shooting the exact same angle. And I was like, oh man, this, like you already know, the video's not even going to be that good. But the bigger problem came during the ceremony time, and the ceremony space is it's a beautiful cobblestone helipad on the top of a cliff. And because of this, there's nowhere to hide. It's a very open space, but it's also very, very small. And so you have to be very cognizant of where all the other vendors are because you don't want other people in your photos. You don't want other people in your video. And at one point, one of their video guys, the guy in jeans and a sweater and a hat, stood in front of the entire crowd in the middle of the aisle, which you never do. Like that's wedding photo video 101. You don't ever stand in the front of the aisle in front of people. And I gave him like 30 seconds because I'm like, okay, he's going to get his shot and then he'll get out. And he stood there for 2 minutes and for 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and ceremony is the worst time of day that you could possibly yell at someone because it's the ceremony. And one of his other guys was in the back, and I went and grabbed him, and I was like, listen, I don't care what he thinks he's getting up there. You have to move your guy. Like, he is going to crush, because they're about to, and I can tell, like, the first kiss is coming in about 2 or 3 minutes. And I was like, if he's in front of everybody for this is going to be brutal. And so, and the guy was like, well, no, he's fine. I was like, no. And I'm yelling this as loudly as I can in a whisper, because I don't need the entire ceremony of guests being like, what is happening in the back? So he finally goes up there, tells this guy to move. All the guy does is he now sits down on his butt and scoots over 2 feet and sits in front of the parents.
Oh. So basically, there's no way you can get a shot from the end of the aisle.
No. And there's nowhere else to go because this space is so tight. And not only is he in the front, but they've got 2 other guys in the top corners, which are also the worst places to be because they're in every one of my photos. So, and at a certain point, like I actually started taking photos of him in the aisle just to be like, as a cover my ass photo.
Yeah.
Because
this happened.
And I was like, this was definitely not me, blah, blah, blah. And and eventually I had to grab his other guy again and say, and I ended up swearing, and you guys have an explicit rating. So I said, you need to tell your guy to get the fuck out of my photo, because he is going to ruin every one of these photos. Like, he needs, like, I don't even want him at this wedding anymore. And I literally grabbed the guy. I was like, you need to move this guy now. So luckily he was able to move him about 10 seconds before that kiss happened. So luckily we got it. But he also ended up in every photo as he's backing down the aisle with the bride and bride. And I was just like, and the planner saw this happening, but she was way up top, like from a viewpoint, but she couldn't get down in time to make this happen. So I just had to do it. And as soon as that ceremony was over, I went and grabbed the guy and I said, listen, I'm not sure where you guys came from, but I said, you clearly have never worked a very nice wedding like this before. And if you're in one more of my shots today, I will have the bride and groom kick you guys out because you're going to ruin everything. And it's the only time I've ever gotten like aggressive at a wedding. But at the end of the day, like, when you're getting paid, speaking for myself, when you're getting paid really, really good money and your clients have that level of trust and then they skimp on their other vendors, that skimping is going to have a much bigger impact than they realize. And so you kind of have to take it. You have to take that control yourself and say, listen, you guys, you are done. Like, if you get one more of my shots, I will kick you out personally.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back, because as I'm listening to this, I'm like, okay, I feel like in retrospect that a conversation beforehand with them could have been helpful.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. We had that conversation. And because I knew it was going to be a problem during first look, because fast forward 2 hours prior when we did first look, and because they didn't come up and introduce themselves, I made the effort and said, hey, I'm Brian. This is my team. Like, let us know if you guys need anything. We'll let you know if you're in our shot. I'll let you know if, and let us know if we're in your shots. Like, obviously, when it comes to vendor relationships, especially on event day, there's 2 types. There's collaborative and there's combative, and there's not a lot in between. And so for me, at the end of the day, it has to be collaborative, because there's nothing worse than working with other professionals who are not professional. So, and again, especially in California, working with these kinds of vendors before, I know well enough to be like, hey, this is what's happening. Here's how this is going to work. And so even when I give my spiel during first look, I tell the bride, and I always make sure the video team is standing right next to me. I look at the bride or groom and say, hey, listen, this is your first look. Take as much time as you need. If this takes 5 seconds, great. If this takes 5 minutes, even better. And I specifically look at the video team while I'm saying this to the bride, and I say, we are not going to stop you. We are not going to interrupt you. You guys just do your thing. You'll know when it's done. You'll look at us awkwardly and be like, okay, what do we do now? And then we'll go take some photos. We'll do some video. But we are never going to interrupt your first look. And I looked at the video team literally in the eyes as I said this to make sure that they heard it. And they did. And about 14 seconds into first look, I could see them getting antsy, about to interrupt. And I literally grabbed the guy. I said, do not mess this up right now, because they were having such a great moment. And he already wanted to restage that first look. And they restaged it twice before I told them they were done, because I said, listen, and I said to them in front of the brides, I said, okay, you're done now. Like, you can't direct them all day. They're not actors. They don't know what to do in front of your camera, and it's making everything else look weird. Like, you're going to burn them out. And that's the problem with vendors like that, is like the burnout of the couple. They don't have that kind of patience level to deal with acting. So we had that kind of conversation because I wanted to spearhead it off the bat, and then have that happen at ceremony too. That's why I was just like, what is happening?
Was the rest of that day also a nightmare? Because it kind of sounds like
So
it's giving me a little bit of anxiety.
it
to be
was
honest.
yeah, I mean, luckily on my end, again, because we were the hired professionals and they were kind of the afterthought vendor that didn't necessarily need to be there. I didn't feel bad having yelled at these guys, essentially. So for the rest of the day, they stayed as far away from us as they possibly could. And the other thing too is I also went and told bride and groom, and I told the planner, because I didn't want this to be just a me issue and them thinking, okay, great, like the photographers are just assholes
Like,
and they hate
this
us.
grumpy
And that-
Brian.
Yeah, exactly. And because I'm not on event day, I am the least grumpy person, and there's not a
Right.
single guest that saw me not happy that day. Like, no one ever knew that there was any issue except for the planner. And I told the brides very gently, I'm like, hey, just so you know, like, your video guys are a little obtrusive and they've kind of already messed up a few of my things. And the brides luckily got it. And so they were like, okay, cool. Like Brian, you're in charge. Do whatever you need to. And I immediately told the planner as well. And she immediately understood. And so luckily, like, we were all on the same team.
Yeah.
And so, which was great. And the planner was a very close friend of mine, and she knew because she could see it happening. So she was more than happy to have my back. Because at the end of the day, she also knew the product that she was going to get from these video guys was not going to be very good based on how they were shooting and their inexperience. So luckily, having that relationship with the planner certainly helped. And yeah, the rest of the day, they avoided my photo team like the entire day. And it was great. The rest of the day was fantastic.
I mean, yeah. I feel your pain. I've had this happen before with videographers,
Mhm.
and it's only honestly has been like a situation where you've been in where it's like the client has a friend.
Yeah.
It's the friender situation where it's like, oh, they usually videotape my daughter's dance recital. This is a true story.
Yep.
They do the dance recitals, and he just loves our family, and so he's offered to do the video for the wedding.
Yep.
Dance recital with a stationary camera. Totally different.
Well, and that's the thing. It's, clients don't necessarily realize that they're better off not hiring someone than hiring someone bad, because when they hire an inexperienced, non-professional vendor, it has a bigger impact on all the other vendors. So they don't see it as, okay, well, if it's not that good a video, we don't really care. The bigger question is, well, is it also going to mess with your photos? Is it also going to mess with your catering timeline and your DJ and all of the other moving parts? Because it only takes one crooked cog in that system of wheels to mess with everything else. And so I think that's what clients don't realize. Like, they would have been better off not having a video team. And also, I saw the final product and it was about as bad as I expected it to be. And so there wasn't a huge benefit to them hiring a cheap vendor. And that was the thing too. Like, I can't imagine they paid very much for these guys, because they could have been college students that had rented all that gear too, for all I know. So yeah, it's but yeah, again, that's that comes down to client education and saying, hey, listen, this could be worse if you hire somebody bad. Like, you're better off not, or hiring an actual professional.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, and I think I could go either way.
Mhm.
Did after the event, did you feel like, okay, I'm glad we're done and I'm never going to see these guys again? Or did you feel like, I kind of feel like I need to explain things, like tell them why this was so bad?
In this circumstance, I would have been happy not working with them ever again. And also because they came in and they didn't introduce themselves, they didn't say hi, they had like a little bit of an attitude already coming in. And to me, the first 5 minutes of event day is the most telling of how someone operates their business. And if they had come right up, and because I've also worked with some amazing, brand new, inexperienced video teams, but they've come in and said, hey, I'm Stacy and Steve. This is like our third wedding. Like, we don't want to mess with you guys. Like, if we're in your way, like, definitely let us know if you guys need help with anything. So, that first 5 minutes of the day sets the precedent of that relationship, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so even though we come in early to assert that dominance, we're also very nice. Like, I will smile at every damn vendor the second they walk in that door, because I also want to have a good experience with every one of those vendors. So if they had come in with that kind of forward, like, hey, we're really excited, but we also recognize, like, you're running the day today as the photographer, would have been a completely different story. And I wouldn't have had to actually like get upset and, yell at these gentlemen versus, plenty of other vendors who have been like, hey, listen, we're going to set it up this way. If you guys can stay on this side, that would be great. So to me, that initial impression matters way more than anything else. And so if they had come in with a better attitude, I might have been more like, hey, let me give you guys some really good advice versus like, I am never going to work with these guys again. Like on my blacklist,
I have a question from like Brian and Kimberly, like you guys are there like on the event day. Me being a station person, I am usually not there. If something goes wrong, like shit hits a fan like this, or is there a hierarchy? Like with like, would you go to the couple first? Would you go to the planner first?
Great.
Would you be talking out with the vendor first? Like, is there some sort of like unwritten rule like of hierarchy at the event?
Yeah,
That's a great question.
That's a great question. I would say the couple is the last person you speak to.
I agree
Absolutely
with that 100%.
The last person you speak to. They don't ever need to know there's a problem. They don't ever need to know like shit's going down. As far as they are concerned, their day is going 100% according to plan. So, typically if there is an issue, the planner is going to be the first person I tell, not so much as like a whine or a complaint, because I never want to complain. It's more so just like, hey, just a heads up so this is going on, because I feel like that communication is super, super key. Like no one loves a surprise. And I think just keeping at least the planner or whoever's kind of running the day informed is good. But at the same time, you don't need to go in there and just be like, well, I'm going to stop working until this team, like that'll never come out of my mouth. It's more like, hey, just so you know, I'm not sure if you saw it, but the video team was literally in the aisle the entire time and they've already kind of messed a few things up. I've spoken to them, but I just want to let you know in case anything else goes down for the rest of the day. So, you don't have to escalate the situation necessarily, but having that communication with the planning team, I think, is important. And Kimberly, you probably have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I agree with it 100%. I feel like as a planner, I have the responsibility to know everything that's happening at all times, which is why our job is so hard.
Yeah.
But I also, to Brian's point, like I never want to be surprised. Like I never want to, after the fact, be like, I had no idea that happened. And a lot of times too, because where like Brian, you might have not have had conversations with that video team prior to that event day, I likely have spoken to every single vendor multiple times, sent them timelines, you know what I mean? So it's sometimes a little bit easier for me, I think, to run interference because I likely have more of a relationship with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because we'll show up on event day and we may have gotten that vendor list like a week before. But yeah, to your point, we've had zero interaction with any of those vendors prior. So, we may be meeting that video team for the first time, like as we're shooting. So there hasn't been any opportunity to build any of that rapport, any of that trust. And again, that's why to me, that first 5 minutes is important because you have to build that trust really, really fast with your vendor team. So again, like that communication is key.
Well, and even when it's like a friend or a situation, it's not someone that I already know or like really know that I'll ever work with again. Chances are I don't have a very deep relationship with that person, but they also know that the client has hired me to make sure everything goes smoothly.
Exactly.
So it's kind of one of those things where like, Brian, you talking to them, like, yes, you should because y'all have to work together. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of times if I'm like, hey, FYI, I just want to make sure X, Y, and Z is working for everybody. Like the same thing that I'm saying that you're saying comes across very differently, I think, when it's a planner saying it.
Absolutely. And in this case where I did speak to the brides, which is a very rare occurrence that I would ever tell my clients about anything that like we're having an issue with. In this particular case, I was super tight with the brides. We had a really phenomenal relationship. I think they had maybe mentioned to me at one point, like, hey, we hired a video team, but like you're kind of new and you haven't worked with them before. And I think they had also noticed at ceremony that was happening because like this guy was so obvious you could not miss him sitting in the middle of the aisle. And so like very, very casually and like afterwards, I very, very very politely was just like, hey, just so you know, your video guys might be in a few of my photos because they didn't really seem to know where they were supposed to be. So I didn't say, hey, these assholes that you hired are doing a terrible job. I was like, just so you know, like this, they're going to be in a few of my photos. And then they're like, oh, well, if you need to tell them to move, like you just do whatever you got to do, Brian. I was like, okay, awesome. So that's about as far as that conversation went. So we kept it
And
very
I also think, Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I also think that there's probably a time to say it that was appropriate. You know what I mean? Like it was a lighthearted situation time where it was like no one's stressing out and like we're just hanging out. And FYI, like I feel like I've told clients things before at events in a time that it was appropriate.
Yeah,
not when they're like walking down the aisle, like just every way the cake is not here, but let me fix your dress.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I think I told them basically after ceremony we were finished with portraits and they were like grabbing a cocktail, so we were just like, So because too on my end, that was not even necessarily me telling them like, hey, your video team sucks. That was me covering my ass to be like, hey, these ceremony photos are going to be a problem because there's a video team in all of my photos. So that was also more of a cover my ass too. So it wasn't a surprise to them. Again, no one likes surprises. When they did get those photos back and like a couple photos of them walking down the aisle, there's the back of a dude's head with a hat on. So, you know, it's kind of a multi-purpose. But again, that conversation only lasted, 20 seconds, but it was just enough to be like, hey, just so you know, but not a big deal. And like, I've already fixed it. I've already handled it. Everything's cool.
Yeah. I feel like photo video, that combo is always a little tricky.
It's like the Montagues and the Capulets.
It really is.
Rumble.
And and luckily, knock on wood, for the most part, I'm at the level now where most of the events that I shoot are with video teams who are not only good friends but are good colleagues, people I've worked with consistently. So, and when I say combative versus collaborative, when I get to work with vendor partners and video teams that I have good relationships with, all of our content is that much better because we know how to work together. That video team knows like, okay, Brian's got his posing down. We're going to get some really good portrait stuff. I know that when I run into like a dead space of like, I ran out of a quick idea, video team can take over and I can shoot over their shoulder. So having that partnership is absolutely phenomenal. And so, luckily now I, for the most part, get to work with really, really phenomenal people. So I don't run into these issues very often at this point.
Yeah. I like your thought about the first 5 minutes, though, because I think that you're spot on at that for sure. It's like first impressions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's across the board with all vendor categories. And, I say this when I do my speaking is that, to me, working an event day it's an interview with 15 other vendors because I may not have worked with that caterer before. I may not have worked with that florist. And, I think photo, video, planner, like we're in unique positions that we get to see every vendor work on event day. Like a caterer doesn't get to see the florist necessarily working, or a florist doesn't get to see the officiant doing their thing at ceremony, whereas we get to basically have a front seat on all vendor categories.
Yeah,
and so,
that's a good point.
And everybody watches each other. Like I can't shoot ceremony decor until floral has finished their installation, and I can't shoot my reception decor until catering has gotten out of the room. So I get to see how the banquet captain manages his team or her team, and so we get to see all these vendors work throughout the day. And same thing, they get to see us work. And so, I think first impression, you have 15 first impressions over a 12-hour window on that wedding day. And so I think it's as important to be that excited and that smiley and that friendly to every one of those vendor categories because everyone's watching you, whether you realize it or not. And so they'll remember if you did a phenomenal job, they will remember if you did a terrible job, but not a lot in between. So, making that first impression with every vendor category is super, super important on event day.
It's when I feel like I hear the most horror stories from people. It's like when people just, those egos get in the way and people just don't, go into it with, we're all on the same team. We all want the same result. We want a great event. And if you just go into it just thinking of your company and not the whole picture, that's going to be conflict.
Exactly. And I would say photographers probably have the worst egos of all the vendors, but at the end of the day, like it's not that hard to check it.
What about bands? What about a band though, Brian? I've got some band egos.
Don't even get me started on bands. No, bands don't, bands, yes, they have egos. At the end of the day, the biggest problem with bands is they have the world's largest stomachs. So they just come in and eat all of everyone else's food. Like, if I could just have my vendor meals separately as a separate line item on that budget from the band and just know that I'm going to eat, because we've gotten to events before and like we've been working working 8 hours already, and we go in to have our tiny 5-minute vendor meal, and there's literally no food because the band has gone in and wiped it out, because they've been there for an hour, so they got to eat.
Thanks, Frank the drummer, for eating all the chicken parmesan.
Yeah, exactly. No offense to the bands out there, but but again, because they don't have interaction with the rest of the people on event day, I think there's a disconnect with them and the other vendors, because they are like they're literally in their own little world, so they don't have the foresight to be like, oh, these photographers who've been working all day, we left them a quarter of a piece of chicken and nothing else. I think they just don't. It's not even in their wheelhouse of thought because they're so disconnected from the rest of the event day.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about vendor challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've had some difficult client situations that you've had to overcome as well.
No, they've all been fantastic.
They're all angels sent from above. You know what I think is interesting is that about our industry, unlike working, I was a corporate event person for years and worked in an office, and oftentimes my challenging people would be like the CEO or like my boss or whatever. And it's people that you have to work with consistently.
Sure.
I think the benefit that we have is like there's an end date. Like no matter how difficult you are, I don't have to talk to you after this date.
We wish you well on your wedding and never get married again.
Yeah, exactly. Forever. And don't call me for number 2.
Yeah.
I think, yes, I think that applies for the majority of vendor categories, especially planner. Like when you're done, for the most part, like there's always some residual stuff like final bills and, any of that kind of stuff. I think the funny thing for photo and video is the wedding is kind of the start of our relationship with those clients because we're still not done 2 weeks later and a month later and a year later because, we still have to edit those photos. We still have to deliver those photos. We have to work on their wedding albums. So, it's funny. Sometimes I wish I could just absolutely be done. Like as soon as that wedding's over at midnight, great. I never have to deal with this again. But unfortunately, for the most part, that's really not the case on photo video end. And so it's sending photos a month or 2 later and not hearing from your clients for 4 months. And then all of a sudden you have a really bad Yelp review, which has happened once. And so we have to deal with, like, I have a current client right now that I'm not going to talk about that I am dealing with some aftermath on, because she's just a very particular client and she had certain expectations in her own head that were not met. And I did this is not a brag, but my team did a phenomenal job on this event. And it's been confirmed by every other vendor category. They're like, yes, you guys crushed this event. The final product was amazing. But said person had their entire life wrapped up in this event and now it's over. And what do they have left to do? The planning team is done. The design team is done. The only things they're still dealing with are photo and video. And these clients were already folks who were more prone to have issues way before this event ever happened anyways.
Yeah.
And so we kind of knew this was coming down the pipeline. Like we had been warned, like, hey, this client is going to be a problem client. And they absolutely are. So, at the end of the day, this event was months ago. I may be dealing with this client for another year. And it's not a lawsuit situation. It's not any of that. They just love to complain. And so, that sucks. Like it's really shitty, to be honest. But at the end of the day, as long as I'm not getting sued over it, great. It's more so I just need to keep my cool. It would be very easy for me to be like, why are you such a crazy human being? But that's not going to solve anything. That's not going to make her feel better. So it's a tricky spot to be because I still have to kill her with kindness while maintaining my own sanity and not just rolling over because this person is a bulldozer.
Yeah.
Oh, I kind of feel like you guys are saying like, one and done, but I feel like all my difficult clients always come back. I don't know why that is. If like, maybe I just am like killing them too much with kindness or
okay,
I
my
don't know what it is.
Getting married, but I'm in charge of it. So
yeah, or like they'll like refer me, and like their referral will be a difficult client too. But I don't know what it is, and also like I'm just sometimes I'm like, didn't you hate the experience as much as I did? Why are you coming back? Like it just boggles me. Like, are you like are you a sadist? Like, do you love this? Like, what is going on? Because I feel like I know I didn't have a good time. I'm sure you didn't have the best time. Who knows? Maybe they did, but I do
and
get
that's
a
it
lot
is
of
funny.
repeat.
I think those types of folks, personality wise, just kind of thrive in this combative environment. And and if they have someone who's going to push back and is not just going to be a pushover and is going to deal with it, to them, like I see it as like a game for them. They're like, well, how much can I push until I get my way? And that's this particular person right now. And so, I could get on the phone with her, and literally the last phone conversation we had a couple months ago lasted an hour. I spoke all of about 30 seconds, and it was just her literally just ranting at me. And and at the end of the call, I was like, yep, you're right. Like, I'll do this for you, but I won't do this. I'll do this, but I won't do this. And that was about it. And she just wanted someone to listen to her complain. And, I think with those types of personalities, and this happens in every industry, this is definitely not secluded to the event space. But I think, with the events business, especially weddings and celebrations, there's so much more emotion tied to it than a corporate event, that people just get that much more wrapped in it because it's such a personal thing for them. They've poured their heart and soul into this design. And, at the end of the day, too, you just have to recognize that you can't make everyone happy all the time, even if you've done your best on a job. And so it is tricky, though. It's that very fine line of walking from, do I tell you how I really feel because I'm going to shoot myself right now if you keep doing this? Or do I just try and continue to be nice to you until you hopefully just go away? Which at the end of the day, that's always kind of the hope.
Yeah. See, Brian, I actually do think you're in a harder situation, because I could, like, very much so, like, the day happens and I'm done, 99% done.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're saying, I may have some final bills to follow up on, but that's it. I can see a light at the end of the tunnel because I have an end date.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, I mean, not like all the time, but there have been times in my career with my business that all I can do is get to that date. Like, I just need to get to this date.
Uh-huh. And see,
but you don't really have the date.
And that's the thing. We don't really have that, especially on the photo side, because interestingly enough, and for the most part, this has been the case for my entire career, it's very specific, I think, to photo, is that clients don't really want to fuck with us before the event date because we're the ones who determine how they look. So, so like,
we're gonna give you a big old forehead if you're rude.
I mean, realistically, like, I can always deliver really unflattering photos if you're super mean to me. And so, it's and so for the most part, no one's mean to the photo team before that event happens. Like, they're all on their best behaviors. Like, I've had clients before where the planner or designer has been like, oh my God, I'm going to pull my hair out. This is the worst client ever. They're such a pain in my ass. And I may have 5 or 6 interactions with them in the year leading up to the event, and they're always super nice. And then the event day comes and they're super nice. And then the second that event's over, they turn into their real selves that I haven't seen yet. They're like, oh, we're so not happy with this. We didn't get this. And
with the photographer, you guys are delivering an actual, like, a product, like an actual piece. They might, like, they can't really complain about the food too much. Like, it's already been eaten, it's like you guys can often become the scapegoat because it's an actual physical thing that they can hold and touch, and see.
And it's so subjective. It's not like I'm carving a wood box to exact specifications where I'm like,
you can like go and change it. You can't go back and change it.
That's exactly it too. I can't retroactively be like, okay, great, I'm going to go retake this photo from that moment, and you simply don't like the way that it was shot. And so that is definitely the tricky part, is that it's a final product that they can physically look at, but we can't change it, and it's subjective. So one day they could love that photo, and then 2 weeks later they could decide they hate that photo. And that has absolutely happened. Like, I've had 1 or 2 clients in my career where I've gotten a text or an email the day they got their photos, and they're like, oh my God, these are amazing. We love them so much. Like, thank you so much. We had such a great time with you and your team. And then fast forward like a month later, and they come back and they're like, well, we really don't like these, and we don't like the way these are edited.
Looked at their credit card bill statements and they're like, oh my
God.
Yeah,
or mom said one thing that changed their mind, and they're like, oh, maybe I don't like these. And that's the tricky part, is that they can, like, it's that easy to have a change of heart with that final product because it is so subjective. And so that, like, luckily is not a common occurrence, but it's certainly something that can happen because it only takes one person saying one thing about that product to be like, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. And then they're like, wait, maybe I don't like these. So it is a weird product to deliver because, and I will say, like, video, I think, has it worse because you can't reshoot video, but you can re-edit video. And I could never be a videographer. I would never have the patience to do that edit because the edit is so much, it's the bulk of the work. But, I have plenty of videographer friends who've come back and been like, oh my God, I'm going to kill these clients. Like they've come back 10 times for revisions on the edit because they didn't like how they looked in this. So they just want the audio clip of this one. And they don't want this person in it because like she's now no longer dating the brother and like all these tiny little things in what is essentially a 4-minute video. So I think video has it tougher on the edit end if a client is not happy because they do have the ability to re-edit that final product.
And I would say a lot of times, especially like me being stationary, I'm a lot of times in the beginning of the process, I can almost weed out the crazy.
Sure.
Like I can kind of I know like a lot of the times like I can know the red flags and it can kind of be like, oh well, unfortunately we've taken on too much for that time. Our production schedule, books, stuff like like that, or that it seems like you're saying like they're nice to the photographer at the beginning. They don't come crazy. They become crazy. At midnight after dark. After the event.
Exactly. Well, and the other tricky thing too on at least on my end is that as you get to a certain level, I shoot a fairly limited number of events. So I'm only photographing 12 to 15 weddings per year, which is not that many. And so, I love when people ask me, they're like, oh, you must be turning down so much business. I'm like, fuck no, I'm going to take any amount of business that comes my way if they're going to pay my rates because I'm not cheap. But because of that, even if I necessarily see a red flag or two, I'm still going to be fairly inclined to work that event because, if I turn that job down, that could be a 12th of my income for the entire year. So, there's always one or two clients every year that I'm like this is probably going to the red flags at this point. So I'm like, this is probably going to be an issue. But at the same time, because I've been in it for so long, for the most part, I know how to deal with any potential problems that are going to come up. And you can tell early on, like, okay, great. Like this groom is going to have an issue with this, or he's very particular about how he wants this done. So you just learn to adjust to those.
You take it like a challenge, like, it's a challenge.
Oh, absolutely.
Him, or it's like a relationship. Oh, I can mold him or her into the mate I want him to be.
I can change them. Yeah. So I definitely never think I can change someone. Like I know better than that. But it's more so it's the mentality of I'm getting paid enough to take on this challenge. And so, and I will say too, when I have clients and couples who are so unbelievably amazing, that those ones make up for my crazier ones. So that's kind of, I look at it as a balance. Like if for some reason I have a season where I've got like 3 or 4 super crazy clients, then I'm like, okay, what am I doing wrong? And should I start turning these down? If I've got like 1 or 2 every year, I'm okay with that because I have other clients that absolutely sustain my positive mental health because their weddings are so fun and their families are so beautiful. Like I had 2 or 3 weddings last year that were just some of my favorite events ever. Now I'm shooting for their families again this year. And I'm even more excited because I already know how good that experience is going to be. So I think for me, as long as that scale is very heavily skewed on positive clients, I'll take 1 or 2 negative because those, I still got to pay my rent. So that's kind of how I look at those.
Yeah.
This is kind of a question for Kimberly and for Brian. If you guys feel like you signed the contract, they are a difficult client. How do you establish those boundaries to make them less difficult?
That's
don't ask me because I was like, I'm the last person to ask because I don't know how to set boundaries with difficult people.
Well, and see on my side, I don't really have to have boundaries because I have such little interaction with my clients pre-event. So, I mean, realistically, like I could book a wedding and have one interaction with them over a 12-month period. And I could be like, hey, here's my questionnaire, fill this out. But because I don't really need any information from them, I don't have to have these long drawn out conversations. I'm not on the planning side. I'm not having all these meetings with my clients. For me, one of my goals this year was very specifically to start texting with my couples more, because I actually want more interaction. Because in the past, I've had such limited interaction with them that come event day, I don't feel like my connection with them is as strong as it could be. So
that's interesting.
I've purposely made myself text them more. I've now set notifications on Instagram for all of my clients, so that anytime they post on their story or they make a post, I'm one of the first people to see it. So I'm actually forcing myself into more interaction with them. But it's never transactional interaction, because it's mostly just like, hey, I just want to know more about you. I want to see what's going on in your life. Like, I want to have a deeper connection, because to me, that's going to make my photos that much better on event day. So I've lessened my boundaries. And then even after the event, there's still not that much. It's like, okay, great, wedding's over. I'm going to edit these photos. I send them the images. We have a couple interactions back and forth. And then maybe if we're doing an album, we'll have some more. But beyond that, luckily on the photo side, like, we're not getting texts at like midnight being like, oh my God, I saw this color blue. I want it in my photos. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's interesting.
I think for me, I mean, everyone who's listening knows that my boundaries are kind of a problem. But I think for me, I have found for my most challenging clients, if I can just be one step ahead of them, then it's fine. Yeah. Meaning, like, if I can just be one step ahead, so you don't have to be asking me, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? Because that's like, clearly that is fueling your anxiety, which then is making me feel like I'm not doing a good job. And then it's just like this cycle of like anxiety. Like, nobody wants that. So for my most challenging clients, as long as I can be one step ahead, I can usually be okay.
Yeah.
Unless they're just like not nice people, which I've only had that like twice ever in the 8 years I've had my business, where like, you're just not a nice human.
Yeah.
And try to like over communicate with them too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like I had a client there that I felt like I had to like, it was just kind of not clicking. And I finally kind of set her down and was like, okay, how do you like to be communicated with? And like, it was like, she liked to be text. Well, I'm not a big texter. And like, but I like, that was just like really the only way for her to make decisions. And I started doing it, and it just ended up being so much. And then also we would have like a weekly call and talk about it. And just like, I mean, that was a lot of communication on our part, but it made it like, you know, a million times better. You know, we probably would, you know, we might've been sued if we had done it. It's like, it just made it such an easier process for both of us. And it became, instead, it just took the stress out of that situation.
And I think that's the smartest thing you could have done, is simply just ask, like, how do you like to communicate? Because, you know, we always assume we know what our clients want, or we assume that, well, this is how I communicate. This is how everyone else likes to communicate. So, I mean, that was definitely the smartest thing you could have done.
And I know we all say like, yes, you know, like, we've got our boundaries and this is how we do it, and these are my procedures, stuff like that. But also at the end of the day, like, I cost a shit ton of money, you know, like, I'm a luxury product. And so like my client, like, I'm going to have to bend my boundaries sometimes and communicate how they like to be communicated, you know?
Absolutely. And that's exactly at a certain point. Like, if you're getting paid peanuts, then you have the luxury of being a little more picky about how you handle those things. But at a certain point, when you're charging that much money, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna do whatever you need me to do for the most part. I mean, I know there are planners who are like, no, I've got like a rider of things I don't do. I don't care how much they're paying me. But I think that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you are charging really good money, like, you need to be accessible to those people, because you're also doing a smaller number of events too.
That's right. Yeah. I like it.
The crazies. I mean, yes, we talk about them, but they do pay our bills.
They do. Indeed. I love them.
Yeah.
So it's fine.
Brian, before we wrap up, are there any like key takeaways or like just tips in general for dealing with difficult situations that you
I mean,
think you could share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think at the end of the day, never let anyone see you sweat. So, you know, the way I look at any problem, because every event's going to have a problem, whether it's with the clients or it's with the vendor partners, there are problems at every single wedding. But, you know, I think seeing how people handle those is a good indicator of how they run the rest of their event, how they run the rest of their business. And so, you know, to me, there's nothing worse than seeing an event professional like freak out on wedding day, because that mentality, if it's that obvious, transfers to the guests and the couple. And so for me, the way I look at it is, I could be having the worst day of my entire life, but like, I mean, I could have had something catastrophic happen, but you will never, ever, ever know that that's a thing. And, you know, in fact, I had this conversation with a few photographer colleagues 2 nights ago, because I've had a couple second photographers over the years who have had bad days, and that directly translated not only to the product that they were delivering, but on their attitude, on how they interacted with my clients. And so, I think as event professionals, we have to maintain that level of professionalism the entire day, even if it's if everything's going wrong. Like anytime something bad happens on a wedding day, I always kind of laugh and I'm like, it is what it is. Like you have to roll with it. There's no reset.
Yeah.
We're not redoing this tomorrow. So, I think when I see people freak out, it's like, why? There's literally no reason to freak out, because if this is something that's out of our control, then we just have to adjust. We can't let our clients know that that's an issue. So for me, maintaining that level of sanity and upbeat and I'm going to smile through whatever shit is going down right now, and no one's going to know that there's bad things going on in the back end. So, I think that's incredibly important for professionals. And, I think that also applies to client interaction on event day too. If you really do have that craziest client and you are about ready to throw them off the balcony that afternoon, they shouldn't ever know that. You can go back to the catering room and tell everybody, but you don't need your clients to ever know that, because someone will notice, even if it's not your clients. All those guests, they're watching you all day long too. And people know if there's drama at an event, especially if it's on the event team, because we are clearly not guests. Even if we try and blend in with our outfits, people know that we're the team. And if they see us freaking out, the last thing you need is that rumor floating around from table 10 to table 12,
Yeah.
So my lesson is everyone's always watching. So maintain your
I love it. Well, Brian, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. This is a really good
we will talk to you again in 2 more years.
Hopefully not that long.
And don't forget, if you've gotten value out of the podcast, including this week's episode, we would love for you to contribute to our Patreon page.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We've got several different levels that are very economical, and they just help us produce quality education and quality episodes just like this one.
Exactly. You can go to thisweekinweddings.com/support. As little as 10 cents a day helps us with our out-of-pocket expenses.
Thank you.